I feel like we're always starting off our podcast nowadays with an apology. My first apology is that I'm losing my voice thanks to hay fever, so I'll try and speak up as much as I can. We haven't been updating fortnightly like we had hoped since Amsterdam, but there are a number of very good reasons for this.
Yeah, we were in a production of The Vicar of Dibley, and then rehearsals began for our production of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which Carrie is actually the musical director for.
Ooh.
And we're both also in a professional production called Running from Paradise. We're touring this with Purple Dreams Production. And, I'm going to put a little link in our bio if any of our lovely listeners want to come, because we're touring the country. We're not just where we are in 6 different venues around the entirety of England. So if you want to come and watch us, then please do. But I also took part in a charity walk for Copperfield. I did the Copper Trek with G, walking 100k in 5 days with celebrity captains and 100 of the most inspirational people I have ever met. So you see, all totally valid reasons.
Absolutely, and if you go onto our socials, we'll put some photos up from the trek and everything in our socials, but it's on our personal socials as well. It doesn't mean that we aren't still sorry, and we have really quite missed recording, so our plan is to get back to as normal a programme as recording as possible. We won't promise a time scale because the rest of the year is getting busy. But we want to be uploading a lot more regularly, and we thank you for being so patient with us. Like, we see you guys, we love you guys.
But anyway, back to today's story, and these are some of my favourites that we do. We take a well-loved childhood classic, box office smash, and essentially ruin it.
We're ruining your childhoods.
We go behind the pixie dust and reveal the true stories that inspired some of your favourite movies.
We've already done episodes on Cinderella,
If the Shoe Fits,
Pinocchio,
Not the Story You Knows, or The Haunting Hee-Haws,
Beauty and the Beast,
We Bet This Rings a Bell,
Frozen,
You'll Snow This Queen Story,
and one story so dark we had to include it in our sub-series, A Dark Cup of History, which was Sleeping Beauty.
There's no sleeping after this dark beauty.
This week's story, though, actually has real-life origins, which I didn't know.
Well, you do now. You'll be learning with the rest of our lovely listeners, Carrie.
Every day is a school day.
It is. With her long golden hair, miserable life in a tower, and a penchant for painting, we're obviously talking about Rapunzel. Now, I love this Disney movie. It makes you laugh, cry, and appreciate the little things, Also, Pascal is damn cute.
And can we just take a moment for Zachary Levi's voice?
We will take a moment.
Like chef's kiss.
Mm-hmm.
And in this week's Ridiculous Death, we discover why keeping a part of your old lover inside of you should probably stay metaphorical.
So, grab a drink, your trusty sidekick, and a frying pan, and let's get historical.
So, let's start with the origins of the story.
Yep.
It's always good to go from the beginning. Nearly everyone knows the fairy tale of Rapunzel. A beautiful girl is kidnapped and trapped in a tall tower. She's trapped in a tall tower by a witch, and she never gets a haircut a day in her life. By the time she's a teenager, her hair is so long it can be used as a rope for the witch to climb up and down the tower. Eventually, a clever prince sees this and makes his way up the tower to meet Rapunzel. They fall in love and he helps her escape. They then live happily ever after.
This version is a story written into most modern day children's books, and Disney's animated film Tangled basically follows this storyline as well.
There's also a version of it written into the musical Into the Woods by Stephen Sondheim, which is one of my favourite songs. Agony is between the two princes, with Cinderella and with Rapunzel.
Yeah,
it's beautiful. Anyway, apologies. The first written version of the Rapunzel story was written in the year 1600 by a writer named Giambattista Basile from Italy. In this, I know his name before.
Oh, okay. So that was really good of you, Carrie.
Thank you. In this version, Rapunzel is sold to an ogre when she was a baby, all because her mother stole some parsley from a garden. She was forced to give away her firstborn child, and she was locked in a tower for her entire life. The takeaway from that is, don't steal herbs from a neighbour.
But I mean, stealing a little bit of parsley, having to give your firstborn child away is quite a leap.
Plus a common theme in fairy tales, like always bargain away your firstborn child.
Yeah, apparently. The first one you can get rid of because you have more.
I
We
mean,
would be screwed if that ever happened to our parents. We are the firstborn.
but also it would potentially open us up to a life of great adventure.
It would. I mean, life hasn't been easy. It's been some adventure.
I think ours has more been a series of misadventure. We're less Rapunzel, more Lemony Snicket, a series of unfortunate events.
That's literally... I love that. Right, so... The Brummers?
The Brummers!
The Brothers Grimm version. The Brothers Grimm, that's where most of our European fairy tales find us. And we'll start that again. We're doing really great. As with most of our European fairy tales, we find ourselves speaking about the Brothers Grimm, or the Grimm brothers, and their version of Rapunzel in 1857 gets darker.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't recognise the Grimm brothers. It's always the Brothers Grimm.
Sorry.
It's weird.
But they always take the fairy tales we know and love and twist them.
I've just figured out my interesting fact for today. Sorry. We'll come back later. So the story was collected from some less well-known collections comprised by 18th century German folklorists such as Friedrich Schultz, and tales which the Grimms had collected orally from individuals whom they met whilst travelling around Germany.
The plot of Rapunzel, or their plot of Rapunzel, is complex. It begins with a couple living next to a large compound consisting of a vast garden and a tower belonging to a reclusive woman who they have very little to do with and whom we later learn is a sorceress and who owns the tower and the garden.
So if you don't really know what your neighbour does, just assume they're a sorceress.
Obviously.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. But soon the couple finds themselves drawn towards the compound as the wife becomes pregnant and begins to crave a certain type of salad green which they spot growing in the garden next door. The plant is generally believed to have been the Campanula rapunculus, a salad green known as the bellflower.
Bizarrely, the pregnant woman is adamant that she must eat some of this Campanula rapunculus, even as she begins to lose weight, threatening the life of the unborn child.
In despair, the husband agrees to break into the sorceress's garden to obtain some of the bellflowers. And his first try was successful. He scales the wall of the compound, finds some of the plants before returning home and giving them to his pregnant wife. But now she becomes obsessed with eating them.
In the days that follow, he repeatedly breaks into the compound to obtain more and more of the flower, until one day, while he is escaping from the compound, the sorceress catches him. This act is said to be the origin of the myth of Rapunzel.
The sorceress now insists that the couple hand over their child when it is born as punishment for having broken into her garden.
So far it's similar to the ogre one.
Yeah.
Similar.
It's like, you steal my salad, I steal your child.
Yep. They begrudgingly agree, because, of course, you want my child, I'm sorry, have her. They agree that the child is indeed handed over in due course when a baby girl is born. The sorceress names her Rapunzel after the plant which her mother was so obsessed with eating, and as she grows up, the sorceress locks her up within the tower, within the compound, and here she grows up to be a teenager with the long golden hair.
I don't get their logic, but I kind of do get their logic, because if they don't have the flower, she'll die. If they do have it, she'll live, but she'll be living with the sorceress. So maybe it's better to have your daughter alive with someone else where you know she's safe, rather than dead. Sort of weird twisted fairy tale logic. Yeah. Then one day a prince comes through the area and hears Rapunzel singing from the tower. He's entranced by her voice and is drawn to see what the source of it is. Eventually he manages to find his way into the tower and he and Rapunzel fall in love.
But they must navigate the ill demeanour of the sorceress, and although the prince attempts to explain the situation to her when he does, the sorceress cuts off Rapunzel's hair. She casts her out of the tower and the compound altogether.
She's left to wander the wilderness, seemingly helpless, given that she's not known anything other than the tower and the garden for her entire life. When the prince returns and learns what's happened, he throws himself from the tower and is blinded.
That took a turn.
Yeah, because I think he lands in like a thorn bush or something.
He spends years after wandering the wilderness, but eventually this story has a happy ending. One day, as he is wandering blindly through the forest, he meets up with Rapunzel, having heard each other sing.
Yes, because when you're wandering blindly through a forest, the only thing you can do is la 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 la.
Obviously.
Yeah. So when they meet, the prince's sight is miraculously restored. Fairy tale logic. And he learns that Rapunzel has given birth to twins, a boy and a girl, in the interim. The family heads back to the prince's kingdom, where they live happily ever after.
This ending is surprising, as unlike many of the Grimm brothers' stories, this one starts bleakly but ends happily. So that's the Brothers Grimm version.
I mean, I suppose they have to have a happy ending for someone at some point.
Yep. So that's the Grimm's version of Rapunzel.
Okay.
But as I had told you before we started recording, that you now know, that this was actually based on a true story.
Okay.
The original true story that inspired all of the versions of the fairy tale is the darkest one of all, however. Instead of an evil witch locking up her daughter in her beautiful daughter in a tower, the captor was the girl's own father, who was so controlling over his daughter's life that it led to her death. This is the story of Saint Barbara.
In the year 1275 CE, a man named Jacobus de Voragine recorded a story of a young woman named Barbara who lived in Italy. She was a beautiful girl, and her father, Dioscorus, was a rich and powerful merchant. Just like today, a person's reputation had a lot to do with their success in business, so her father wanted to stick to the status quo and continue practicing the traditional pagan religion of Rome.
He also knew that his daughter was very beautiful. Men were already lining up to meet her, and many of them were even princes.
Dioscorus.
Dioscorus made a rule that men were not allowed to meet her unless they went through an interview process with him first.
I mean, dad vetting his daughter's boyfriends.
Yep.
That's not a new concept. This made Barbara angry, and she had an argument with him, saying that she had free will and wanted to choose the man she was going to marry. When he tried to give her options of men he thought were good suitors, she would turn them all down and refuse to cooperate.
Since his daughter was being rebellious and he had to leave her alone while he travelled for work, Dioscorus decided to throw money at the problem. He believed that the solution, obviously, was to hide Barbara away in a high tower where she was never allowed to leave. That way, she would not even have the option of disobeying him and potentially falling in love with a man while he was away.
Since Barbara's father was busy travelling and working as a merchant, he hired people from the town to construct the tower and deliver food and supplies to her. She lowered a basket down the side of the tower and they would place the goods that she needed inside. Simple system.
Yep.
Simple but effective.
One day, someone... Are you alright?
Yeah, I'm fine, sorry.
One day, someone left her a book that explained what Christianity was. At the time, Christianity was the religious cult that the Romans were trying to prevent from taking over. Considering how little love and affection her father showed her, and the fact that she was so alone and isolated up in the tower, it is not surprising that she would be impressed by the Christian messages about God.
So we've got evil pagan father, enlightening, freeing Christianity.
Yep, but this is a true story. Continue.
When the men came to do the renovations on the tower, the men felt pity for her and would let her climb down to speak to them. While they were working on the tower, Barbara asked them to make 3 windows instead of 2. These windows represented the Father, Son and the Holy Spirit.
So she's sticking her 2 fingers up to her dad with her religion.
You know what? I often felt that, my type of filial rebellion would be adding an extra window.
Hey, that pissed him off, just wait. They tried to say no because they knew it would make Dioscorus angry, but beautiful Barbara somehow convinced them to do it anyway. While she was walking the grounds, she began to destroy her father's pagan idols because the Bible said they were a sin.
I mean, that would probably pay him off more. And one day she even convinced the workers to send her a priest who came to her under the guise of being a doctor to treat an illness. He baptised her and she officially became a Christian. Today, a teenager wanting to become a Christian would make her seem like a goody two-shoes. but at the time it was the most rebellious thing a teenager could possibly do. She was fully aware that she was breaking the law, and it's possible she did it just to spite her father.
When Dioscorus eventually returned home from his journey, he expected that his plan to shelter his daughter from the outside world had gone off without a hitch. Instead, he saw that Barbara had climbed out of the tower and destroyed all of his stuff, and she had joined an illegal religion.
So men, don't lock your daughters up. It doesn't go your way. He was absolutely furious. At the time, practicing Christianity was a crime that was punishable by torture and death. Considering that someone must have given her the Christian books, the workers knew the intention behind the 3 windows, and her baptism may have been public knowledge around town. At this point, Dioscorus was harbouring a fugitive in his tower.
Even though Barbara was his daughter, Dioscorus handed her to the authorities. We will never know if he was that heartless and cruel, or if he was given no choice but to obey the law and hand her in. He grabbed her by her long hair and dragged her into the Roman courts.
I mean, the grabbing and dragging was probably a bit harsh, but he may not have been given much of a choice. It was either like, you bring her in or we get her.
But I kind of think that he was that ruthless and cruel, because he was locking her up in a tower because she didn't do what he said.
Well, yes, that is a logical
So
argument.
I think he was a bit
of a bastard.
Yes, definitely.
When the judge asked her about her crimes, she shouted that she only answered to her Lord Jesus Christ. Well, that's a great way to help yourself there.
Innit?
It was clear that she was guilty of being a Christian, and evident that no matter what her father did to try to control her, she was not going to stop fighting for her free will.
The people began to torture her. They cut her skin with knives and threw salt in the wounds.
Ouch.
They also burned her skin, and when she was finally weak and near death, Dioscorus, her father, chopped his daughter's head off with a sword.
At that point, it was probably a mercy. After her death, Barbara became a martyr in the Eastern Orthodox Church, and she was canonised as a saint. Even if someone died defending the religion, there is a rule that no one can become a saint unless they perform a miracle.
In the magical Christian version of the story, Barbara flew when her father was chasing her around with a sword, which is interesting because if she could fly this whole time, why didn't she escape the tower sooner? Logic.
When she was hiding, a shepherd in his field told Dioscorus where to find her, and apparently he was turned to stone immediately for being a jerk. I would love that power.
Right.
If someone was a jerk to me, there'd be statues everywhere. When they were torturing her, apparently Barbara was covered in a comforting fog that prevented her from feeling any pain while she was tortured.
I mean, I guess because she was made a martyr and a saint, they like to put some...
They had to give a reason why.
Yeah, and they had to... Yeah, so she could fly, she felt no pain, this comforting fog. Last but not least, that there is a claim that lightning struck and killed Dioscorus immediately after he chopped his daughter's head off, which I'm thinking was kind of deserved.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah, so that is the life, the true story of St. Barbara.
Yeah.
Well, true as in up until the bit where she could fly. But yeah, so that actually happened, and that kind of inspired the stories of Rapunzel.
Okay.
But did you realise that there wasn't much mention of her having long hair?
Yeah, they had a basket instead of the hair to get things up and down. So where did the hair go?
Well, after reading this story, you may have noticed that was missing. Every painting of Barbara does depict her with really long golden hair, but it's not long enough to drop from the tower and use a rope, which is pretty much the most iconic part of the Rapunzel story.
However, in the Persian epic, the Shahnameh, or the Book of Kings, from the year 1000 CE, the book tells the story of the origin stories of all the men who would someday become royalty.
In ancient Persia, 2 lovers used the tower as a secret hiding place. They were forbidden from being together because they had come from enemy countries, kind of like Romeo and Juliet.
Okay.
The young woman,
Rhodope,
was beautiful. She had very long, shiny black hair. She would run up and down the tower, drop her hair out of the window while she was waiting for her lover, a famous king and a warrior named Zal.
Yeah.
According to legend, he shone like silver, so some artists depicted him with a head of premature silver hair.
Ooh, a raven-haired lass and a silver fox. I like
Yep.
it. The fact that Rudabeh dropped her locks out of the window may have just been a signal to let Zal know that she was already in the tower waiting for him.
Of course, the story was elaborated to say that her hair was so long Zal could have used it as a rope to climb up and sneak into her bedroom. Thankfully, he brought his own rope, so there was no need to ever actually do that.
Just like the Grimm brothers, or Brothers Grimm version of Rapunzel, their passionate lovemaking ends up with Rudabeh getting pregnant out of wedlock. Ooh, naughty, naughty.
Yep.
To make matters worse, Rudabeh was the daughter of a leader in Babylonia, and Zal was a Persian war hero. And as sworn enemies, their fathers would never have allowed them to get married. Sorry, I've just had a
fly
fly.
just flew into your forehead.
It really did, and it shocked me, so I did a weird little jump, so I'm sorry if my voice went more funky than it already is.
When her parents find out, they're really angry. But, as all good stories have, a fortune teller makes it all okay by claiming that the unborn child was destined to achieve amazing things and even conquer the planet. Because why not?
I mean, I think every story needs some sort of weird fortune teller just to go,
Yeah.
it's going to be okay. Their baby ended up being so large, Rudabeh was in excruciating pain when it was time for the delivery. According to the legend, Zal was given a magic feather that he could pass over his wife's stomach and perform a caesarean section without using a knife. They gave birth to a son named Rostam. According to the legend, he ruled for 300 years fighting demons and going on some crazy epic adventures.
So possibly because she was in a tower with long hair, that that may have inspired putting them together, because they were both in a tower, that Rapunzel having the long hair. So it's kind of like a mixture of the two. Barbara's a real story. The Persian, we don't know if that's true, as in if that happened.
It's probably like an embellishment. So
yeah, but they think that's where the long hair came from.
Yeah, but it's quite common to embellish the stories of kings or heroes to make them sound a little bit better. It's like you've got King Alfred the Great, the cake scenario.
Yeah.
So it just makes them sound a little bit better. So they probably embellished it, and then somewhere down the line, someone's told the story of St Barbara, and then someone from like Persia has gone, wait, we've got a story like that. Someone in a tower, and this has happened, and then slowly it's kind of developed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are other adaptations of the Rapunzel story, as there always will be. In another version of the Rapunzel tale, the witch was a veiled attack on the Sun King, written in the late 1600s, and was used to criticise the most powerful ruler in Europe.
Charlotte Rose de Caumont de la Force.
What a name.
Well, I know, right? It's impressive. Was a French fairy tale writer with a scandalous history. She had multiple affairs, including one with an actor who shocked the royal court by accidentally leaving his nightcap in her room. Scandalous.
Mm-hmm.
And according to one rumour, Charlotte Rose was sent away from court when Louis XIV, aka the Sun King, suspected she was sleeping with his son.
Charlotte Rose wasn't just sent away, she was locked in a convent against her wishes. And while in the convent, she wrote her own version of the Rapunzel story called
Personette.
Did the author identify with the beauty locked in the tower? If so, the evil fairy in Personette was a clear allusion to Louis XIV, who forced Charlotte Rose into the convent.
Now, we can't do an episode on Rapunzel and not mention Disney's Tangled.
No.
And for our fellow Disney nerds, here are some facts about the movie.
I'm a Disney adult. I love everything Disney, so I had to include some facts about the movie.
That's fair. I get that.
Because it was quite a big deal for Disney at the time.
Yeah.
In 2003, a Rapunzel movie was announced for a 2007 release. animation does take quite a while.
And there's a hell of a lot of work of people that go into it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yep. At the time, the film was not called Tangled. Instead, it was called Rapunzel Unbraided, which I actually think is really cool.
Yeah. No, I like that.
Yeah.
Rapunzel Unbraided had become Rapunzel, and then another name change was announced. This time they decided to call it, yes, Tangled. Part of the party line from Disney was that they considered the film a two-hander between Rapunzel and Flynn, so they didn't want to just call it Rapunzel. Another assertion is that Disney was worried that a movie called Rapunzel would not appeal to boys, and they wanted it to be a film to appeal to a broader audience.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, and she's not.
Because Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, they're all the princesses, and you know that it's the stories about them because it's their name.
And it's part of, because you had the Disney Renaissance in the 90s with Beauty and the Beast and everything. This is part of the Disney animation Renaissance where you've got Tangled, Moana, Frozen. So these are more the females that don't necessarily need the man to save them. They're going to do it anyway, but they have the man, and you've got cool male characters who have their own kind of storylines. What you did. So I like that.
When Rapunzel Unbraided was announced, it was originally pitched as a Shrek-style film, which is to say an irreverent fairy tale, at least partially. Chief...
the CC, just say CCO.
No, but I've forgotten what it's called.
Chief Communications Officer?
That's going to hurt my brain.
Well,
he's the CCO of Disney Animation, Michael Eisner, pitched the movie as set in modern San Francisco. Initially, it was going to be two San Francisco teenagers, one called Claire and one called Vince, who were going to be transported into the Rapunzel fairy tale as Rapunzel and Prince Beau, respectively.
That's a cool idea. Chief Commercial Officer.
That's it, thank you.
When Disney was auditioning for Flynn Rider, they only wanted English actors. The character was intended to be British. Levi is American, but he used an English accent for the audition. Disney gave Levi the role, but they decided they were okay with him using his natural American accent for the part.
Alan Menken is synonymous with Disney as anybody.
Yes.
The composer's worked on films like The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin. He even has got the EGOT, the Emmy, the Grammy, the Oscar and the Tony.
Yep.
But not just one Oscar, he has 8 of them.
Mate.
This dude wrote Under the Sea and Be Our Guest. And this was the first Disney animated film that Menken had worked on since 2004's Home on the Range, which was not exactly his best work. This one turned out just a little bit better.
I mean, Home on the Range was okay, but it's not as iconic as some of his others.
No.
Adjusted for inflation, upon its release, Tangled was the second most expensive film ever made, trailing only Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. That's probably for the level of CGI in Pirates at World's End. The total cost of production is an estimated $260 million, with the film taking 6 years to make. That may sound like a lot, and it is, but the movie ended up earning more than twice that at the box office, making it a resounding success. I wonder how much more they've made from merchandise and downloads and everything afterwards.
Though much of the budget was devoted to the extensive use of CGI, computer animation, producer Glenn Keane was careful to ensure that the film retained the look and feel of a classic Disney hand-drawn animation. To that end, he organised a special seminar for the artists and animators called The Best of Both Worlds, emphasising that the animation should retain the fluidity of hand-drawn art seen in older Disney classics, while simultaneously taking advantage of the latest advances in technology.
In a nod to classic styling, the film was modelled to convey the look of traditional oil on canvas. One of the main inspirations for the look of the movie was a painting called The Swing by French artist Jean-Henri Fragonard. The painting was described by Keane as romantic and lush, and was a great aid in allowing the artist to create a painterly look for the film.
The painterly inspirations of Tangled should come as no surprise. Rapunzel herself is very talented when it comes to painting, music, baking and astronomy. She even turned the walls of her tower into a grand mural.
Which she sings about.
She does.
Even with Keen's emphasis on traditional styles, Tangled still presented a number of technological challenges. Chief amongst them was Rapunzel's hair. It took 6 years of programming and refinement to finally get Rapunzel's hair to behave as the directors intended. The program used to animate Rapunzel's hair was called dynamic wires and used differential mathematics to handle the complexity involved in bringing her hair to life.
But how much hair? Well, Rapunzel's hair is 70 feet long, but that's just the beginning. Her hair consisted of nearly 100,000 individual strands, which in real life would weigh over 10 pounds. So it's a good thing that computer imagery was used. Could you imagine drawing all of that hair over and over again?
I can't even imagine having that much hair. How did her head not just crack down onto her spine?
Fairytale logic.
Good point. Speaking of CGI, Tangled is the first Disney princess film to be animated via computer imagery. Tangled was also the first princess film to receive a PG rating by the MPAA.
And that is due to how mean Mother Gothel is.
She's like the very definition of gaslighting.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Played very, very well, to be fair. Like, the actress that voices her is really, really good. But, yeah.
Yeah. Mother Knows Best is such a good song.
It's a fun song to sing, but when you listen to the lyrics, you're like, oh, that's dangerous.
Yeah. Especially, the biggest line from it that I take is when she goes, like, and take it from me, you're getting kind of chubby. I'm just kidding. I'm just saying it because I love you. That's like, oh my God. That's so horrible. Like, everything about it is just like...
It's the whole, like, oh, I deserve this, you know, what... I don't care enough, but hey, I only bathed and changed and nursed you. What do I know? It's
yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Growing up, like, in our generation, the amount of times you had if you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry for, or, oh, don't worry, I'm just your mother, or literally, mother knows best.
Yeah, it's so clever.
Like, we love our mothers to bits.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a lot of respect for our mums, but it's a different generation now.
Yeah.
But you see it now, you're like,
this song hits.
Yeah.
Yeah. But lastly, Rapunzel became an official Disney princess on October 2nd, 2011, a year after the release of the film Tangled.
I suppose I had to wait and see like how well it did.
Not just that, she's a Disney princess. But when in Disney World, to become an official Disney princess, you have like a ceremony in Walt Disney.
Right. Okay,
I
didn't know
and you
that.
get welcomed in. Yeah, and the other princesses come, and you have it's like you have a coronation ceremony.
That's cool.
You need to look at them on YouTube; they're really cool. But yeah, all the other Disney princesses come out, and you officially kind of like get crowned as an official Disney princess, and only then are you allowed to take part on like the Disney princess floats in the parades and stuff.
Did they have like a slightly different one for Elsa? Because she's a queen, not a princess.
Her and Elsa and Anna were done on the same day. But yeah, in the parades at the moment, Rapunzel is on a separate float than the princesses.
Okay.
Her and Eugene are together on a giant Viking ship that swings, has like swinging thingies, and it has some of the other Vikings all on it.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, and she stands there with her frying pan.
That is cool.
It's really cool. So what do you think of the story of Rapunzel? Because it's a bit different. All our other ones, we normally just tell the Brothers Grimm version because it's evil and horrible and gross. And it's just a fairy tale. But I think this might be the first one that's actually based on a real person. The others have little bits that might be inspired by, but this was completely inspired by St. Barbara.
Which is interesting, and it's another case of life is worse than the fairy tale.
Yeah.
Which isn't always actually the way. Sometimes the fairy tale is so much worse.
Yeah.
But no, it's good. I didn't know about which is odd considering growing up in a Catholic household. I didn't know about St Barbara, but it does kind of make sense if she's part of the Eastern Orthodox Church.
But imagine,
and I was Roman Catholic.
Yeah, but can you imagine the biggest way of sticking two fingers up to your dad is taking the tower he's building to house you forever. You make that with his money and his people into the religion that's illegal.
Yeah,
that girl had some bollocks.
That is. Although the irony nowadays is that you do it the other way around. You turn it from Christian into something else.
Yeah.
So I find that interesting, but it does kind of fit in with what I know of the rise of Christianity at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's for once the Brothers Grimm version was the warm and fluffy version.
Yes. Right, this week's ridiculous death.
Yes.
Well, before we get to that, do you like the movie Tangled?
I do, actually. I do quite like it. I like because it came out around about the same time that I was watching the TV show Chuck.
Yeah.
So
I loved Chuck. It was so cool.
It was so good. Zachary Levi was very much kind of in the public mindset, and then later on he joined Thor as well. But and I didn't know he could sing. Yeah. And then seeing him in that, I was like, excuse me?
I mean,
everyone knows Mandy Moore can sing.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Oh my god, I walk to remember.
I might be wrong, but I think this is the start. I think Tangled was the start of Disney using the voice actors to also sing the songs. Because, like, in The Little Mermaid, Jodie Benson sings the songs.
Yeah.
And in, like, Mulan and Jasmine, they were sung by Lea Salonga, but then...
Mulan was voiced by Ming-Na Wen.
Yeah. And
from Marvel fame and Star Wars.
Yeah. So,
yeah, and didn't Ruthie Connell do Merida at one point as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all like, but Mandy Moore and Zachary Levi were Flynn Rider and Rapunzel, and they sung as Flynn and Rapunzel.
Yeah.
And now that's what they do, because, like, Anna and Elsa are voiced by...
Kristen Bell and Idina Menzel.
Yeah, and then they're sung by them as well, the same as... so that's kind of... That's a big change in Disney, that they're... I actually think that's quite good for the singer's perspective.
Yeah.
Because... And the voice actors, because obviously from Aladdin, when Jasmine sings Part of Your World.
Yeah.
But then... So that's what she's famed for. But then the voice actress is kind of lost in that. But also Lea Salonga's kind of lost in that. But the fact that they're doing it as both, they're celebrated as a whole as
and it's good
the
because
actor.
You don't necessarily notice, unless you've got a really critical ear, you don't really pick up that they're two different people.
No.
But keeping it as one person keeps it consistent, because a lot of people do sing like they talk, especially Americans, they sing like they talk. So it's really interesting, and it's good, and it gives them a bit more overall. And a lot of voice actors can actually they are good singers. Yeah. So yeah, it's very, very good, and it's a good film, and it's funny.
Yeah. Have you watched any of the spin-offs? Because they had Tangled, Happily Ever After, which was a 6-minute short put in front of another Disney movie, and I did know what it was, but now I don't. But it was in, like, at the cinema. It was before. And it was Rapunzel and Eugene's wedding.
Oh, right, okay.
And then that was a spin-off from the Happily Ever After, is the TV show called Rapunzel's Tangled Adventures. And that ran for 3 seasons, 60 episodes.
I've never watched those.
No.
Not at all.
I've not watched the TV show, but I've watched the wedding.
Yeah. No, I've never seen either.
You should.
I didn't know of the short. I knew of the TV series, but I haven't watched them.
Yeah. But I've not watched the TV series because to me they are a little bit on the younger side, but the short is really good. It's their wedding. Yeah. And you also see Eugene and Rapunzel in Frozen.
Yeah.
They come to Elsa's coronation.
Yeah. And you can recognise it because it's...
You see the back of Rapunzel's dress. But yeah, so now we go on to Ridiculous Death.
Okay.
I'm going to read this one, dude, because your throat. I'll save it a bit.
Thank you.
So this week's ridiculous death makes me feel funny, as in, kind of makes me want to gag. Like, the thought of it is just, ugh. I'm not a fan.
Okay.
I'm not a fan. But I'm going to read you an article from the Los Angeles Herald, and it was written on the 24th of October, 1891. So bear in mind, some of the wording is like old school.
Yeah, okay.
Cool. So, the title of the story was Doctors Greatly Puzzled. Rearcroft nearly killed by locks of his 2 wives' hair. Okay. Several weeks ago, a harness maker named Rearcroft, who lived in Compton, was taken sick. His case baffled the skill of attending physicians. Up to a few days ago, Rearcroft suffered intensely from an apparent obstruction of the intestine. It was then decided that an operation would have to be performed in order to save the man's life, and Dr. K.D. Wise was called in. The operation consisted in cutting open the abdominal cavity and searching for the cause of the obstruction. The result of the operation was that the doctors made a discovery which is, as far as known, without a parallel in history of operations in this or any other country.
Okay.
After finding the obstruction, it should be stated that its removal could only be brought about by slitting open the intestine. The doctors reported that the substance inside felt very hard. The intestine was opened, and the medical attendants were astonished to find a large mass of woman's hair. The foreign body was removed, and the wound in the intestine carefully sewed together. The patient rallied thoroughly and seemed, for the time, to recover from the effects of the operation. But although alive, it's hardly expected that he will recover, as it was found that 6 feet of intestine were just verging on gangrene on account of the long stoppage caused by the impacted hair. The hair plugged the intestine as tightly as a cork would a bottle, and the man was on the verge of death when the operation was completed. Now, the switch of hair was 2 inches in diameter and about a foot in length. It was human hair to a certainty. The doctors were all unanimous on this point, and that it was women's hair that was proved by its length. The strangest part of all is that one half of the hair is black and the other half was blonde. After the operation, the patient denied ever having swallowed any hair. This statement made the matter more intensely interesting for the doctors who were trying to solve the mystery. Rearcroft had been married twice. His first wife was a brunette and is reported to have had jet black hair. Rearcroft took upon himself a second wife 4 months ago. She had blonde hair. The supposition is that the switch of hair found in the stomach was made up of hair taken from the locks of both of his wives of the patient. The theory, and is probably correct, as is also the one that Rearcroft swallowed it as a charm. If he did, the charm will, in all probability, have cost him his life.
So basically, he has a deceased wife and a new wife.
Yeah.
And as either a lucky charm or some way to remember them, he swallowed chunks of both of their hair.
Well, basically,
tied together in a switch.
Yeah, he had a foot of blonde and brunette hair.
Yeah.
Basically, plaited it together and swallowed it. And just swallowing hair just makes me feel. That's what makes me feel really horrible.
Why would you not braid it into a bracelet or put it in a locket like some people do, or make a ring out of it? Why would you swallow it? I mean, best case scenario, you're gonna crap it out.
I mean, that is gonna happen. When you swallow shit, you normally have a shit.
But at that point, if he swallowed that not long after they'd been married, and they'd been married 4 months, that's probably been in his intestines for 4 months. He would have had one hell of a lot of compensation, not compensation.
Complications.
Not even that. Constipation. That was the word.
Yeah, he was a very poorly man.
Oh dear.
Yeah, so I don't know if he probably died, because this was written as the operation had been a success, but he was unlikely to recover. Because back then in the late 1800s, that's a big operation to have your intestine cut, and it was going gangrenous.
infection control wasn't the best. They were it was developing, but it wasn't the best. But if he's already got gangrene in his intestines,
I just can't. Swallowing hair, literally, it's like when I put wet wood in my mouth, my whole body just tenses and makes me feel really, because when you have hair in your mouth and you just gag. How did he swallow it? A foot of hair.
You'd have really had to wash it down.
That's as much as you had cut off yesterday.
Yeah, it's no, just no.
Oh.
And my hair was both black and blonde. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to eat my hair. I don't think there is anybody I ever have or ever will love enough to swallow a foot of their hair.
No.
I'm sorry, but no.
Yeah, I know there is stories that people do eat hair, and there's been many people have had operations where hairballs have been removed from their stomach.
There's actually a medical, psychological condition for it.
There's other, when I was researching for ridiculous deaths, there was a woman that used to do it in her sleep. She didn't know. She used to eat her hair in her sleep. And she had, her entire stomach cavity was a hairball.
But when you have, the convulsions to cough up a hairball?
I don't know.
Or do we not have the same... I don't suppose we have the same kind of reflexes like a cat, because we don't wash our hair, so we don't lick ourselves and therefore don't cough up a hairball. I don't know.
But this man chose to swallow his dead wife's and current wife's hair.
Don't do that, people. Don't do it. It's not big, it's not clever.
And it's
gross. Not as romantic as you think.
No.
It's really not. I mean, you want to make a romantic gesture, just plait it into a wristband or something. Don't go swallowing it and then leave your wife having to look after you with your gangrenous gut.
Yeah. Ugh.
It's not cool. Would you like to hear a random fact?
Yeah! Do-do-do-do-do, Carrie's random fact.
Jake Grimm of the Brothers Grimm, as well as being a known collector of fairy tales and anthropologist, he was also a very renowned linguist. And actually, he's one of the people who first gathered he's called the Grammatica Germanica or something similar to that. But it was the construct of the Germanic languages, and actually realised links between the English and the German languages and the Nordic languages, as well as some of the Romance and Coptic languages. He was a very, very renowned linguist, and some of his work still survives today to that, and is actually still used and cited in a lot of linguistical papers.
Carrie's random fact. So that is our episode this week.
We were going to do another episode on the Battle of Waterloo, because on the 18th of June it was the anniversary of the Battle of Waterloo. We may still do that in the near future, because we do like to try and make them timely as well as fascinating. But that may take a little while. So, as we said before, we've got Running from Paradise, we've got Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
We're both going on holidays.
You've got another play, Love Games with Purple Dreams. And then later on in the year we're doing Panto again. So it's going to be hectic, but we are going to do what we can to make it timely, because we've decided we're really good when we're creative together. This is a creative thing, and we just love doing it.
Definitely, but also keep an eye out on our socials, because we may not be able to sit down and record an hour-long podcast all the time, but we can do videos and posts and Instagram things, Twitter polls, just to get a conversation going. TikTok videos. Yes, follow us on TikTok. All of our handles are at Cup of History, so we're really, really easy to find.
Yeah.
So, and if you have any ideas for future episodes, get in touch either on our socials or email us at cupofhistory@outlook.com.
And if you want to further your knowledge in your own time, you want to read some history books, you want to learn some other history, or want to dive more into what we've told you, then there is a way you can do that now, which is, I've completely blanked on the name of it.
Oh, Listen Notes.
That's the one.
There is, basically, you know how Google, you type stuff into Google and you can find stuff?
Yeah.
Listen Notes is a search engine for all podcasts. So you go to Listen Notes, and you type in the sort of thing that you like if you're into history, and it'll bring you up all the podcasts that talk about history. And you can do that and it has all of them, millions of podcasts.
Which is something I'm going to look into, because I do like some history podcasts, and I listen to them on my commute to and from work, and when I drive to see my family in Tamworth.
Yep.
So that's like a 2.5 hour drive, so it's a good time to stick on a podcast.
Definitely. Or when I was training for my trek, I listened to podcasts. I listened to Giovanna Fletcher's Journey to the Magic Disney podcast. Bit different to this, but kind of not today. We're doing Disney.
Yeah.
So so go to Listen Notes and find a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. And thank you for listening.
And we'll be back soon.
We promise. And thank you for bearing with us.
Thank you.